If you watch my videos, you probably know that I love games that tell stories. Heck, I wrote a whole book about them. And that I consider the Chronicles of Crime system to be one of the finest examples of convergence between game mechanics and storytelling. These are games that tell stories and they do it in a very fun, very smart way that combines traditional analogic game components and the new technologies. And you will need a cell phone, you need to download a companion app, a free companion app to play the game. Chronicles of Crime, all the games are based on the same mechanism, which means you will have cards that represent characters, represent locations, represent different items that you can find and interact with. And it's very simple. If you scan with your phone a certain character, you enter a conversation menu, and from that moment on, everything that you scan is something you're talking about with that person. So I'm talking to a chief of police, I scan the chief of police, and now I scan another person, and the chief of police tells me what they know, what they think, what they want to tell me, which may or may not be the truth. If I'm not conversing with somebody, I scan a certain item, it means that I'm analyzing that item. I scan a location, I go there. And every time I scan something, the app tells me what results from that action. Again, somebody talking to me, a description of the place that I just entered, etc., etc., etc. There are also times where I can explore a scene, in which case I enter virtual reality and I'm looking around and analyzing the scene and looking for clues. It's a very simple, very intuitive, very visceral way of telling a story or giving you all of the bricks, the building blocks of a story in a way that is very interactive, very immersive, really gives you the illusion that you are there. It's a game system that can be played by a single player, and that's how I played the games in this set here. You could also play it as a team with multiple players making decisions together, but it's still just one character. Sometimes there's this impression that I see people discuss online that it's not a truly cooperative game if you only have one character, but there are games that are published, as 1 to 4 players, 1 to 6 players, so what are the numbers here? I think it's 1 to 4 is the recommended, 1 to 4, but it's still one character. In particular, here we are this lady here from the future with different kinds of cybernetic enhancements. So we all control this lady. Again, I played it by myself. You could have a group working cooperatively, but it's still this protagonist here going around and facing different cases. So here we have Chronicles of Crime, the Millennium series, which are set in different periods in time, and this one is in the future. We are in the year 2400, approximately, give or take a year or two, I guess. Maybe it's just an approximation. But what's important is that we are in a cyberpunk universe, and maybe the game is trying to capitalize. At the time it was designed, must have been about a year ago at least, on the Cyberpunk 2077 video game that came out, and then maybe didn't have as much of an impact as people expected. I tried it, I wasn't too crazy about it, but I'm excited for everything that brings about more games with a cyberpunk setting, because it's a very fascinating setting. You may have noticed that I'm holding the box here. I haven't opened it yet, so different from my other reviews, I'm not going to show you a single thing. That's how I usually review games in this line. I don't want to give you any spoiler, even inadvertently. Maybe I'll show you the back of the box, because I assume that's the kind of spoilers, the amount of information that the designers thought was acceptable. Even that there are cards there, I think is better if you don't see. The general idea still is that you are gonna be her. That's the protagonist. Fine, that's her. You're gonna have a display showing her, and there are certain areas in which you can play cards that represent different parts of her body with cybernetic enhancements. You don't have all of the enhancements available the entire game, or in each scenario, and maybe in some adventures they work slightly differently. And that is the biggest mechanical change that you have from other games in the system. Each Chronicles of Crime gives you not just different adventures in a different setting, but also different mechanics to keep the experience fresh. At the same time, they all keep the core idea stable, and I'm very happy that they do because it's such a solid idea. It works so well. I'm so in love with the idea of interacting with the world by scanning different things and different and having conversations, moving around. I love that. I'm glad that they didn't change it. So mechanically, the again, this is the biggest twist, the biggest change here, and I like it very much. Some of those enhancements, I'm not going to tell you what they do, but they work in really different ways. And there's one in particular, I'm not going to give you a spoiler, but let's say that you can use it only in one way at a time, and so you have to commit to what you're gonna do with it, and then you go somewhere else like, oh, that's not how it should be done. Then I go somewhere else, I do something. It's a little bit of a finicky enhancement, but it's the most fun to use. And when you bam figure out where's the right time, where and when, it's really really satisfying. Other enhancements, some a little more obvious. There's one that does just one thing, so when the situation arises, you're gonna use it. Other ones, you kind of forget that you have them, like, darn, I should have used that. So they do add interesting layers because they add more actions, they add more decisions that you can make, and they just give you more of a feel of the kind of universe that we're navigating here. Or you also have a companion, a raven, that reminded me of a companion that you have in one of the other games in the series, the one set in the Middle Ages, where you have this like smart dog, maybe too smart for that to make sense. But here you have a enhanced semi-robotic raven, rubber raven. Who doesn't love that? And so it's kind of like I'm hybrid between a pet and an internet connection that just Googles things for you so you can scan the raven, and then whatever you scan is the raven retrieving information about that. Don't forget about the raven. I did in one of the adventures, and I regret it because I realized, there's just so much stuff that I didn't figure out because I forgot to ask my trusted companion. So the story world is designed very well. The cards representing the landscapes really give you the sense of this dark, gritty, ominous, depressing in a sense, bizarre world of cyberpunk where you get the sense that the government is falling apart, and so it's a wild land there. It's a no man, no woman's land with different gangs, different groups that are constantly struggling, fighting for power. And so you have this like city with the feeling that it's endless. It's implied, and it's pretty clear to see from some of the monuments that is the Paris of the future that has turned into this dystopian place. Even the Eiffel Tower, they don't call it that way anymore. And when you see what they call it, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty interesting vision, very dark, of the future. So in this futuristic Paris, it's all about what you expect a cyberpunk universe to have. Gangs, warlords, drug dealers, corporations, mad scientists, androids, robots, and you have the cyber world. Some of the locations are cyber places. As in other games in the system, the characters you interact with are represented by cards, and you have the portrait. Again, I assume it's okay to show you what's on the back of the box, and so those different characters that you can encounter. But since some of these people you meet only online, some of the cards are represented by avatars. And I just struggle a bit to remember which one was which. They're different avatars, they look different, but from time to time I'm like, wait, this one, who is this one again? There's especially an adventure that is very heavy on you talking with people online only. And after a while I was like, I can't tell quite which one is this one. That's very thematic, but it was one of the adventures in which I thought that blurred the storyline a little bit. The stories that you get here, you get an introductory scenario, which is actually more fun than I expected. The rulebook says it's just for you to learn. I found that's pretty good. Then you have a standalone scenario and you have a mini campaign, which is three different adventures that they recommend you play them in the order in which they're presented because they build upon each other. You're also told in the rulebook, but don't worry if you have new players coming in, they don't need to know what happened before. I played at Solitaire and I disagree with the statement that they make in the rulebook. I just don't see somebody jumping into chapter 3 of the mini campaign what they're really gonna get out of that. Technically, you don't need to know what happened, but you're not gonna enjoy a fraction of what you would if you have played the game in order. Just these characters come in and, okay, there's this character called like that. But I played the other scenarios. I know so much more about this. So you would have to give a lot of reports to your friends, I guess, to get them up to speed. The point being that after they listen to that summary from you, they're not going to enjoy the encounter as much as you who have played this scenario. So my recommendation is maybe disregard what they say that and really make sure that you play the game solo, that's fine, or with the same group of friends. I wouldn't introduce friends to the campaign unless they started from the beginning. But that's a really small thing because in general this is a very strong design. Again, I enjoyed the stories. I found it maybe a little harder than some in the previous ones. I scored not quite as well, but there's adventure, there is variety, it's very thematic. If you like cyberpunk adventures and if you like the Chronicles of Crime system, there's a very good implementation of both the system and a good example of this genre. It captures to me the dark, pessimistic spirit of cyberpunk, with adventures that are challenging from the intellectual point of view, from the investigation point of view, but they're doable. It's possible to score, maybe not super well, but okay. In any case, I definitely enjoyed this new installment in the Chronicles of Crime system.